fine. This is not gonna happen. Why do I even have my hopes anymore? It's not gonna happen. Because this show hates me. And Sam is just this weenie loser character when it comes to romance. So, like, why am I caring anymore?
Podcasts, the 21st Century Radio Show. Two friends were hit by quarantine and found themselves bored in 2020. But they committed the one taboo among content creators. Never start a podcast because you're bored. Will they go mad? Give up? Or finish watching each other's favourite shows? Whatever happens, listen with care. For what could equal the horror of spoilers?
Welcome to the Sin and Violence Podcast. I'm Kara.
And I'm Ginger.
And in this show, we will be discussing and doing somewhat daily recaps of the series Life on Mars and the anime Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And just as a little aside, we're speaking to you from the past. In our 1973, I don't know, in our past present, we have just started putting out the first episodes of the podcast, and thank you so much for your responses.
It's been nice.
It has been very lovely to hear from people who are excited, who love both shows, who don't know either show. We had some very nice
one and not the other, like we do.
I had a great comment from someone who said your team is doing great, and it's like, thanks, our team of two.
Our team is awesome. But on this note, though, I do want to put something out there because I think like the timeline has been mysterious and elusive. So we started doing this watch at the end of April, April, beginning of May.
Something like that.
And so, and now it's almost the end of May, and we're just now getting episodes out there. So it took us a little bit to actually get to the point where we were like, if you're wondering why episode 1 encompassed 6 of one and 12 of the other, it's because we did not set out doing this rewatch thinking, we're going to do a podcast, because remember, the golden rule of right now is don't start a podcast.
Yeah.
So, but then we got that far into it, and we were like, we should do a podcast. So that was the logic and the timeline behind all of this.
And it was a limited time run. Like, as we speak, just to give you an idea, we're recording episode 9. I have episode 4 in another tab that I am mixing, and we have just released episode 2 because we're doing, like, rapid fire to start off. But anyway, regardless, that aside, thank you. We are very happy to know that people are enjoying our weird little rewatches.
Yes.
And first watches.
And first. Re-first. There we go. There's an anime right there.
Re-first. I think second season of that's coming soon.
So part of the summer 2020 lineup.
Yeah, all 2 of them. That's all right. Some stuff is now coming. At the point in time we are at, some stuff is coming back. That said, before we go off on too much of a tangent.
That said, we should talk about what we're talking about right now.
Right. So, this day, it's happening!
You keep saying this week. I know you keep wanting to say it so badly.
Because I keep thinking of, shows that are put out on some kind of random standard, but...
Standard? What's a standard?
I don't know. I haven't had one in years. Today, we are discussing Life on Mars, Season 2, Episode 6, and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Episode...
27 and 28.
27 and 28. It was a lot easier when we were on Season 1 of Life on Mars, and I could just multiply by 2.
Oh, that's the reason, sure.
Yep, that is 100% the reason. So anyway, Life on Mars, Season 2, Episode 6, Racism, Heroin. Remember that Sam used to have a girlfriend? Because he did.
Because I also forgot.
I hate to say it, but, same. So, this episode was written by a gentleman named Guy Jenkin. He was the co-creator of a 90s series called Drop the Dead Donkey, which was a sitcom about a news station. It ran very close to airtime so they could make really current jokes. He's not done much in the sphere that, geek sphere people would know otherwise. So, a little bit of history prior to this episode, because this episode has something to do with actual history that might not be known in America. So, In 1962, Uganda gained independence from England. It was a protectorate from the late 1800s up until 1962. 10 years later, in August 1972, Idi Amin gave all South Asians, largely sent there by the British to work in that first half of the 20th century, basically he said, you have 90 days to get out of Uganda. So about 27,000 of them went back to England, some went to Canada, some went to other parts of Africa, some went to India, but a lot of them had citizenship in England. And these people that came back from Uganda to England in 1972, 1973 were called the Ugandan Asians. So that's who they are. So this episode talks a lot about that group of people that might not be familiar to Americans. So the episode starts with Sam dreaming about Maya. Remember Maya?
As I said to you, I can only have room for one Maya in my brain at one point in time, and this was not the Maya that occupied my brain.
This is the second time we've had an Ace Attorney reference on this podcast. So Maya, for those who did forget, because it's been a season and a half, is Maya Roy, who was Sam's girlfriend in the present day, and her running out to go check on a case herself and subsequently, apparently, seemingly getting kidnapped, was what led Sam to run out after her and get depressed and stand by his car and get hit.
And get hit by a CGI car.
And get hit, so it all sort of comes back to this. So Sam has a dream about Maya, who apparently is okay, and she has been visiting him in the hospital, but she has now given up on him in his dream, and so he is now fretting about this. As for our story of the week, the victim is a man named Deepak Gandhi. He was found shot on the floor of the record store he owned, and his pockets are just full of heroin. And in 1973, heroin is very new, so it looks really wild that Sam knows a ton about it. But, again, another historical piece, 1973, heroin was super new on the streets.
You learn so much from Life on Mars.
I went and actually researched this because I had not heard the term Ugandan Asian outside of Life on Mars because it's not in the American history books. Because
it's not an American thing. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, basically. So they find him. It turns out he is alive, just barely. And Deepak Gandhi is taken to the hospital. The only other person there when the cops arrive is this lady named Layla, who is hiding in the back room, and she claims that she is a customer. She heard gunshots, and she hid. Now, Sam considers this whole thing a stitch-up, that clearly the heroin was put on Deepak's person. And the rest of the team is like, no, Ugandan Asians would absolutely be here dealing drugs because that is what they do. And Sam does not like this mentality at all. They go to visit a local drug dealer named Rocket, who confirms that Deepak does deal heroin. It takes a while to get him to this point. He states that he would rather have rabid ferrets munch on his testicles than give away than give away information. Layla, the girl from the shop, also admits later on that she is Deepak's accountant, but she lied to the cops because cops don't care about Asians, so what would it matter? Sam finds, incidentally, a magic broken radio with the help of Phyllis that lets him hear Maya. So he wants this very specific walkie-talkie radio because now he can hear her through that. As he goes to the Asian Community Center, there's a couple people there watching a Bollywood film, and there's Maya in it. And she sort of turns to the camera and she explains to Sam, hey, I can't really have a boyfriend in a coma. I can't do this. And so she is letting go and she is saying goodbye. And it's not nearly as bitchy as I laid it out to be, but it's sort of, hey, I do kind of have to let go. I can't just keep doing this and hoping you're going to wake up. I got to stop. So Sam is not happy about this. He makes a bit of a fool of himself in front of the people at the community center, as is custom.
As Sam tends to do.
As Sam tends to do. Many people, meanwhile, are dying from heroin overdoses. As Sam points out, it's new, no one knows what to do with it, so there's going to be tons more deaths as people are trying it. The team is understandably suspicious of Sam's knowledge of it, as mentioned. Jean calls up some associates to go speak with Rocket again. These associates are named Toolbox and Big Bird, and they arrive at Rocket's place again, And Rocket once again says, hey, I got nothing for you. I would rather have rabid ferrets munch on my testicles. And Big Bird opens a bag like, well, what do you know? I got some ferrets. And they're not rabid, but they sure are hungry.
And they sure are ferrets.
And they sure are hungry, and they sure are ferrets. Rocket blurts out that Deepak's brother Ravi imported the heroin. At the station, Jean and Sam question Layla some more, and she finally admits that not only is she Deepak's accountant, she actually is in love with him. And Jean is weirded out by this, and Sam jumps up and he's like, there is nothing weird about this. I had an Asian girlfriend as well. A little later that day, when she's going home and they're walking her home, Layla's apartment is covered with racist graffiti. Sam's like, okay, maybe we're not going to let you go back in there. You stay with me for the night. This time, when Sam let a lady stay at his house overnight, nothing bad happened.
Thank God.
The worst thing that happened is Annie walked in and saw a girl on his bed and was like, okay. So that is the worst that happened as opposed to the last time. Ravi is questioned down at the station, and Chris runs in and says, yeah, Deepak was in the hospital and he is now dead. Jean reacts to this very coldly. Sam does not appreciate this. It comes out that Jean has a younger brother who got addicted to drugs, became a junkie, and went missing for 10 years. And so he takes these things extremely personally, drugs on the streets and stuff, because he remembers that he basically lost a brother this way. Deepak is found knifed through his gunshot wound. So someone came in and killed him while he was in the hospital and tried to hide the wound. Layla was his only visitor. So Jean and Sam run over with a warrant. And Layla's like, nice try. Layla's not my real name. So you're going to have to go and get another warrant, boys. And Sam says, well, what is your real name? And her name is Leslie Roy, which is the name of Maya's mom. And she is pregnant, and she's going to get an abortion. So now Sam is all in. He was partly in, and now he is completely in. Outside the community center, a skinhead tells Sam that the Asians are in fact smuggling stuff. They go in, and sure enough, yeah, they have all this stuff, these rugs and crockery, and all these things that are being brought in, but underneath it, there's tons of heroin. Jean gets mad again, and he's like, fine, I'm gonna have Toolbox handle this. And Sam's like, no, you can't do that. He and Annie run to get to Ravi first, before Toolbox kills him. Ravi wants to cooperate, but before they can take him to the station, Sam is knocked out. He wakes up, tied up, and gagged with a piece of tape, and there is a plugged-in iron on his chest, which is kind of terrifying.
Yes.
It's really, really awful.
Although, I mean, now I have learned some improvised weapons in case I'm ever finding myself in this situation.
Right? So he's got this plugged-in iron on his chest, like, tied down to him. There's really no way to get it off him. Fortunately, as mentioned earlier in the episode in a random newscast, there have been power cuts lately, and the power goes out. So he's okay. The lads arrive and let him go. The lads. But there is no sign of Annie or Ravi. So they go to Toolbox's, and I'm not kidding when I say this, his 70s villain lair.
Yes, I even called it out. I was like, wait, what are we watching?
Let me explain to you, listeners. Toolbox has a giant, like, electric, like, organ type thing that he's playing like the Phantom of the Opera.
That rises from the ground. That is the real part, okay, here? Like, that's the part where I was very confused as to what was going on.
This is a real thing that really happens in the show. So, the lads run in. Ravi is there, tied to a chair, and about to get very, very deaded. Sam notices that all around the 70s villain lair are Asian imported rugs. So Toolbox is involved in the shipments, involved in the drug smuggling. It was him all along. Big Bird, who is also there, shoots Ravi, and she then gets shot before she can shoot him again, and it's by Chris, which is very cool. Arrests are made, Annie is found, she's tied up, but she's okay. Rocket, the ferret dude from earlier, is also arrested. Off-screen, apparently, Layla, aka Leslie, has decided to keep the baby. We don't really get any insight into why. But she has. Sam visits her at the hospital as she is getting an ultrasound with a brand new ultrasound machine, and he looks at the screen, the ultrasound screen, and just says Maya. And she's like, oh, that's a good name. If it's a girl, I'll name her Maya. And he kind of has this little freak out moment about what a great daughter she's gonna be, and she's gonna have great taste in men, and she's, and there is this very, as is the case with Life on Mars, very bizarre but also very heartfelt moment where Maya and Sam on both sides of whatever is going on kind of say their respective goodbyes to each other. Whereas it is assumed Maya will no longer visit him, and Sam has kind of found peace with that. And out in the hallway of the hospital is Annie. There is some awkward cuteness.
Put a pin in this one.
Yep. This is the same place where Ravi is. Jean is watching over Ravi, who is currently in a coma, and they have another talk about Jean's brother, and Sam is like, hey, we could look for your brother. I'll bet there are ways we could find him. And Jean's like, no, he got found. It was too late. And they drink some booze, and Sam's like, hey, I know a way to help this guy. So they start cranking music. This nurse comes in at the this is one of my favorite shots in the show.
Yeah.
This nurse comes in at the end, and they're blaring Thin Lizzy Whiskey in the Jar, which has been playing throughout the episode. And they come in, and Jean is lying next to Ravi on the bed, just slugging off his booze. And she's like, you get out of here, I'm gonna call the cops. And they're like, ha 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 ha. And Ravi wakes up like, oh my god. And that, listeners, is where the episode leaves off. So yeah, that is the episode. It was an interesting one. Again, I am not familiar with this writer outside of this one episode of anything. Mm-hmm. So I think this is another one where we saw the situation again of people's reaction to certain types of cases is very personally motivated, but I think it was, we saw it with Sam, we saw it with Jean, and Ray was kind of Ray.
Ray just rayed all over the place.
Ray just rayed all over the place. There were some weird Annie moments, and it's kind of like you with Fullmetal Alchemist, where it's like, it's been so long I can't quite remember what's where, and I was a little cross at first. Yeah. Because Jean was like, go get me tea and biscuits. And she's like, it's okay. And then she brings back the tea and biscuits, and Jean's like, good, now get on the case. And I was like, oh, right, he did that little fake out thing. Because at first I was like, was he like this in this episode? Spin around. Nah, he was like this. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, it was an interesting episode. I liked it. I think
one of the things with American audiences on this episode is, okay, there are remakes of Life on Mars. They're in Spain, they're in Russia, they're in South Korea. Allegedly, there was one made here.
I was going to say, I like how you're avoiding the really clearly obvious one. You're like, there was one in Spain and Russia. I'm like, there was one in the U.S. too. I know about it. I read the Wikipedia page for it.
From what I heard, the pilot episode was just outstanding. When they had, they had a different guy playing Jean and.
I'll just say it's hilarious because we've now been posting the podcast around our various social medias. I got somebody who reblogged one of the posts for me today and said, they tagged me and they said, good thing you're watching the UK one. By the way, there's a US one. Don't watch it. So somebody else already got on that train before we even mentioned it in the podcast. They were like, don't watch the US one.
Normally, I would not I love the original show. I love the actors in it. I think it's very well done. But it is a show that I believe is very open to remake. And the reason is, it is a show that deals a lot with local history, local, sort of your country.
Yeah.
The history of your country, the nostalgia of your country. I think with England, it is close enough to America most of the time. Like 80% of the time, it is close enough to American life, American history. We have the same chart toppers. We have a lot of the same history. This episode, in particular, with the Ugandan Asians, this is one of the ones where the history was the race relations and the history of the time were so specific to the place and specific to the time that as an American viewer, it's like, if they had if they had stuck the landing on the American version, this is one of the ones that could have been localized.
Okay.
Hard. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and the thing is, I actually, even with just a vague understanding of what was going on, I'm not foolish enough to not understand that, in early 1970s, things definitely aren't, things are certain, things are dramatically different from today, and some things are not so dramatically different from today, and I think this is one of those episodes where it's like, it's a different situation today than it was in the past, and I'm not a fool, I understand that 1973 is going to be a different place, and even with a vague understanding of the history of specific UK things, I at least understood, I was not, like, totally blind in this episode, you know what I mean?
It was interesting when I don't usually research the history before the podcast because I know most of it, and this was one where I actually had to sit down and go, okay, I really need to know exactly what's going on here because this is not the general concept of race relations in a country of a time is a universal thing, but there were very specific qualifiers mentioned, and I was like, okay, there is more to this than just, it's like, okay, this is Ugandan Asian, and I realized that I missed out on that the first times I watched it, and so I went back and I looked and went, okay, I've learned about a whole thing. Again, like you were saying, it's, well, this is knowledge.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, like, it was all very interesting, but I also just feel like it wasn't totally foreign and abstract to me, where, like, it all made sense,
It makes sense.
And I think there are sometimes, I don't know, maybe this is true or not, but the impression I get from some British media is that sometimes Brits have this idea that, like, there are things that Americans just wouldn't be able to grasp about culturally or historically about their country, and I just think that's kind of a weird mindset to have, where it's like, no, like, even if our histories are different because we're different countries, it's like, well, I have a general understanding of the human condition, which is pretty universal.
There's a difference between something not being understood and something not being one-to-one.
Yeah.
So it's like the circumstances of different populations can be nuanced while still comparable.
Right.
I think is what it amounts to.
Yeah. And so actually on that note, I think what's interesting that I took from this episode, I have my handy dandy notes written down. This time they're in digital notepad form as opposed to my Post-it note form like usual.
Tight.
And one thing I liked about it, I have a line written down from that Sam said, where Sam says, "Whichever strange place you find yourself in, make that your home." Mm-hmm. And I understood what he was saying in the episode, since he was the one obviously more empathetic to the situation of our victim and all those people, and he's learning the history of what they've been through and where they've gone and what their plans are, but I mean, obviously this is extremely obvious that it speaks largely also to Sam in his current predicament, wherever Sam may be, whether it's he's in a coma, he time traveled, or he's going through the 7 circles of hell, according to my theory, apparently. And or actually, my real theory is purgatory. My secondary theory is hell. And and I like that message, if also because it ties into that whole thing where Sam is accepting that his girlfriend Maya is leaving him. And so I think, but what I think is curious about this, and because I am aware there's only 2 more episodes left of my visit with Sam here, and I'm wondering if that means something like, does his acceptance mean he's going to fall deeper into the coma? Is it something more about dying? Like, I'm curious to see where it goes as Sam is accepting letting go of this part of him from present day. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of wondering if that is going to allow him to progress something in this world, or however that's going to play out. Right.
Yeah, that's right. We are very close to the end of Sam's chapter of this thing.
Question. The new season that's supposed to come out, is that going to be back with Sam?
It will be a little easier to talk about it once we get to, like, maybe the last episode of the podcast. It's...
Okay.
I'm sitting here, it's like, how do I say what's going on?
Okay. I mean, Can I ask if John Sim is in it, or is that a spoiler?
Okay, here's what the writers said that they want to bring back as many cast members as humanly possible.
Okay.
How they go about that is another issue.
Well, you writers are clever people. You'll figure it out.
They've been having this idea for a while, and it's like...
Okay, so... With that being said, I will just accept that whatever we have now, what will be in a couple episodes is going to be, that's the end of Sam. The end of Sam.
The future boy from the future. But I do love that line. It does, sort of late in the series, and I don't think this is a spoiler, say that it does become one of the iconic lines of the series.
It does feel very iconic in that regard.
We are seeing Sam come much more to terms, like he's not sitting here going, I'm gonna rig this game until I get home.
Yeah, and the thing is like, he was only, I will say, I think he only behaved that way for a little bit, and I think he settled into the job, and into his role fairly quickly. Because, I mean, I think you have to accept, if you're writing for a short series, that you can't tell the story that you want to tell by adhering to the same notes over and over again. I assume that they didn't realize that John Sim would only be around for 16 episodes when they first started it, but I do feel that they've at least been willing to be like, well, we can't keep playing this card forever. We have to keep moving with this plot. And I think they've done a good job of progressing with that, and not being like, oh, in every episode, Sam is going to jump off a building, or, something stupid like that, because obviously it would get tired after a while. But it is, on the other side, though, I think it's interesting that it does take him kind of this long to accept it, but I imagine that that's going to pay off in some regard.
Right.
So.
As a very casual aside, I love this show for the music. I may have mentioned before that when it was running, when Life on Mars was running, and then when Ashes to Ashes was running, whenever an episode came out, on the official BBC landing page, they would give you the full track list for the episode.
Oh, I didn't realize that the actual page did that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they do it on the wiki now, but when it was running, you could go to the website after the episode aired and see the full list of what played. And there were a couple of soundtracks for each season of each show, and it was kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy, where yes, there is a soundtrack, but they also put out the mixtape soundtrack. And the Thin Lizzy song in this is one of the ones that I kept going back to when I got the soundtrack. It's just real chill. I enjoy it. I discovered a lot of songs this way, and that's really cool. Rocket Man was also in this one.
Yes.
Beyond that, I had forgotten how cool that Bollywood scene is for Maya.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of different ways that they integrate communication with Sam into video and radio and all these other things, and this was so much more otherworldly than the others. The others were very sort of late night spooky, whether it's the girl popping out of the TV or the black and white image from some show, but this was this very almost fairy tale type thing, and I thought that was really neat. That's just a casual note. I thought it was neat. Appreciation for the visual. So, anything else on this episode?
Yeah, actually,
yes.
I wanted to point out something because I have a few more notes. I just random things. I thought it was bizarre and hilarious when Jean said the line, "People don't change no matter how much effort you put into them. Look at Chris."
Aww.
And I was like, Chris is the one who's probably changed the most since Sam has been there, because not only is Chris actually proactive, I still question Ray as a character. Like, why the hell are you here, Ray? I don't get you. There, I said it. But Chris started off as another a wacky background character, but then very quickly you saw him, take on. He picked up what Sam was doing, and he became the Kohai to Sam, and. I was arguably, Chris has changed the most out of the whole group. Ray is still very much Ray. Jean, obviously, is still very much Jean. But, Chris is, more willing to do, the things like multitasking and tape record interviews and be more perceptive of the situation. And he's also the one that can be more, I believe, he's more easily persuaded to follow what Sam is doing, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I can also say, I won't argue that Annie may have changed as well. I think Annie's pretty much the same. She's just obviously the most, like, empathetic of the whole group, which is not a hard goal to reach. But then what I thought was actually really funny was then, again, in my notes, I have written down in all caps, "See, Chris isn't a waste. He shot the lady in the arm." I almost said that line was a build up to that payoff. So yeah. I imagine that was what the original intent was for. But when I heard that line, I was immediately struck by going, wait, no, Chris isn't useless. Ray is useless. This is of no comment about the actors. I think the actors are very good. I am merely talking about how the characters are doing their whole character thing.
No, the actors are wonderful.
Yes.
Yes.
But I was like, Gene, how dare you? And then, actually, I can save this for our different segment in the show, so we'll put a pin in that one, and we'll put that later. And I really enjoyed the ending. I thought that was so dang funny.
It's darling.
The lads ending. It kind of reminded me of the end of season 1, where Sam goes to see the lads, and the lads are all hanging out in the back of the car, and has like, this is a great shot, and this is the same thing, where it's just that shot of Gene and Sam at the end, and, on the bed, blasting music and all this stuff, and that was such a great ending shot, and I feel like that shot, along with the ending of season 1, that shot kind of encapsulate this feeling of the show, and the feeling of these characters, and it's very lads.
I like that thing about the show where they will have the butting heads moments, they will have the arguments, they will have the difficult moments, and especially Sam and Gene, because they are our leads, and them sort of learning to work with each other is a major part of the story. But when it's the two of them at the pub having a drink and like, hey, do you want me to give you an evaluation? No. Or or this, or whatever. It's like, strip everything away, and they actually, at this point in time, they are friends. Mm-hmm. Like, they actually they get along, and they'll be the last to admit it.
Yeah.
Basically.
But yeah, now with that off my chest, I am now willing to go to Fullmetal Alchemist, if you are.
Let's do it, because I have a lot of notes on Fullmetal Alchemist.
Oh yeah, you do have a lot of notes on Fullmetal Alchemist.
Whew, I actually had to say, hey, can we hang out for a second? I got a ton of notes, but...
Yeah. Alright, then I'll try to be quick on my end. So Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, our episodes were episode 27, Interlude Party, and episode 28, Father. Surprisingly, we finally have short episode titles for these things. Episode 27 is basically a recap episode, which if you're an anime fan, you're well aware of the recap episode. But what's interesting about this one that I noted was that it's actually a pretty good recap, because even though it is a recap and there's not a ton of new footage, there is some new footage that I will talk about, but when it recaps, a lot has actually changed from the very beginning to the present. As in, there are scenes and things that have happened that now have new context. For instance, they specifically mentioned at one point, they flashed to Ed talking about the country of Amestris, and they said things took a turn for the militaristic once King Bradley came into power. At that time, we didn't know that King Bradley was a homunculus. But now we know that. So you're like, oh, that's probably a reason why things took a turn for the militaristic as King Bradley the homunculus came into power, and all those things. But the whole framing of this recap is that Hohenheim, who is the Elric father, which we saw maybe about, I think, 14 episodes ago or so, very briefly, at the graveyard in Risenbull. He is having a dream. He's sleeping, so he's dreaming about, he's watching this party, and it's just him, and he's on the outside of this party. It's a bunch of people dancing around a big fire pit. You can assume that they're celebrating, I don't know, like a harvest or something along those lines. And he's talking to a much younger Panako. Panako being Winry's grandma. They're just kind of chatting back and forth, and Hohenheim recalls his sons doing all the city things. And I'm pretty sure Panako, Hohenheim kind of admits, he's just like, yeah, my boys were always going to be sinners, no matter what.
Thanks, Dad.
Vote of confidence from Dad there. So, I mean, obviously, recap. What is interesting is that at a certain point in time, so far we have seen shots of the character that has been revealed to be Father, the creator of the homunculus. Father and Hohenheim look exactly the same.
Yep.
They are just in different locations, and they have different voice actors.
They sure as hell do look exactly the hell the same.
They sure do look exactly the same. Hohenheim wears glasses and Father doesn't. That's about all you can tell them apart from, in addition to them having a different voice and being in different locations. So Hohenheim, you know, when he eventually when he dreams up Father in his mind, Father says some mean things to him. And then throughout this dream sequence, Hohenheim he 3 times gets approached by this person. Once is a little girl who wants to dance with him, and he was like, "No, I'm boring." And she's like, and goes away. And then later on, it's like an older teenager, young adult, who comes up to him and says, basically kind of snaps him out of the father speech and basically saying, like, yeah, humans do kind of suck, but because we work to better ourselves, that means that there's always hope, and we will get through it. And that's the whole point. And then it cuts, and she's suddenly Trisha. So, in Hohenheim's dream, he's remembering when he was approached by Trisha as a little girl and as a young adult, and then as Trisha, who would be, obviously, the mother of his children. Since he's also the Elric father, seemed to believe that they had babies together. So that's the one. So Hohenheim, had like a nightmare dream. Then suddenly it's all bright and lovely, and then he wakes up and he's continuing on his journey. In episode 28, Father, we finally get back to the plot. So where we left off, or beforehand, was Gluttony and Alphonse were outside the doors underground to go see Father. They bop in, and Alphonse is like, "Oh, you look very familiar. You look like my dad?" ? Because remember, Alphonse did not see Hohenheim in the graveyard. That was just Edward, because Alphonse was not with Ed when that all happened. Then Gluttony starts blah, and out from his stomach pops Envy, Ling, and Ed. Recall that they were doing that to get out of Gluttony's stomach last time.
Uh-huh.
And so Ed and Al are both now like, "Who's this dude? Who dat?" And they, they're kind of like, is this Dad? Like, what is Dad doing here? And this guy does not act like he knows them, but he is very fascinated by them. And they're finally like, "Oh yeah, our dad, Hohenheim." He's like, "Hohenheim had kids? Ha 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 ha."
Yeah.
And so, but then, so in this time, though, what he does is, Alphonse is missing his hand from Gluttony, and so the guy fixes Alphonse's hand, he fixes Ed's broken arm and his broken ribs, and Ed and Al both notice, oh, he's doing this with he has like a Philosopher's Stone thing going on, because there's no equivalent exchange or anything like that. Eventually, what ends up happening is, so Father does something, and Ed and Al can't use their alchemy, because as all things do happen in a shonen anime, we do lead to a fight. And they're both still like, well, we're still apparently worthwhile to them, so they're not gonna probably kill us. Scar and May have also shown up. Xiao Mei is reunited with May. Scar, and now it's a big fight's going on. Okay, everyone. And in this whole big fight thing going on, eventually what ends up happening is Father says, "Oh, look at this random scrap of a human, Lang. I want to do an experiment right now." And he blops out the Philosopher's Stone and he plops it into Ling, because Ling has an open wound on his body, so he absorbs the stone, and he becomes Greed.
Also, we should mention that Ling is like 100% for this.
Oh yeah, Ling is like there. Ling is like, "Oh yeah, you bring it on, buddy. I want it." Oh, what did you say? You had a fantastic line. I know what you said.
Oh, yeah, it was like, yeah, Greed is sort of, up and this is not actually terribly far from what was said. So, like, Greed is like, "Kneel before me, pitiful human, allow me to take your essence," and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, hook me up.
Yeah. Yeah, Greed is like, "I want your body," and Ling is like, "Go for it, buddy." So,
and
So Greed takes over Ling's body, and so this Greed, however, is like, I'm not Ling, don't call me Ling. And then number 2, this Greed does not remember being Greed beforehand, so he does not remember meeting the Elrics before, or any of that stuff. They all get, fitty-fighty, and what we learn is Ed and Al still can't do alchemy, but May can use alchemy. So something's up with that! And eventually what ends up happening is, Scar's injured, so he and May run off. Ed and Al are still kind of fighting. Ed is determined to be like, I know Ling is still inside you, Greed. And that's where we're now our father says that Ed and Al have to be taken up above ground to meet Wrath, who is King Bradley. And that's where the episode ends off. It also, post-credits, we get a thing. Gluttony has been dying, and because he used up all his regeneration power, so he's kind of dying. And Father takes over his Philosopher's Stone, and he's like, I'm gonna remake you because I still need my infernal killing machine around. It's pretty handy.
Yeah.
And that is where we left off. The great thing about episodes that are like a lot of fight scenes is even though the fight scenes are complicated, it's like you can summarize it by they fight.
Yeah, that's true. They
fight. The more important part is that Ling is now Greed.
Yeah, that was rough. That was real rough. I was like, but. I can tell you have lots of feelings, so I will hold off on my random points about Hohenheim first. So, I mean, Ling's kind of a dick, I understand, but, he's ours. He's
our asshole.
Yeah, he's a stupid, greedy, annoying son of a bitch, but he's our stupid, greedy, annoying son of a bitch.
This is kind of like how you went. This is how we adopted Barry the Chopper.
This is exactly how we adopted Barry the Chopper. It's like, you're a mess and you're kind of a terrible person, but gosh darn it.
You're our serial killer bound to a suit of armor, dang it.
So it is kind of, I don't know. And also, Lanfan, I'm not okay with that. I mean, I'm so terrible.
It is only episode 28.
I know,
there is a long way to go.
There is tons, especially considering the new opening sequences we've seen have.
Oh yes, by the way, listeners, we finally have some new theme songs. Thank God. The second theme song of the series is the worst of all Fullmetal Alchemist. There, I said it. I don't like it at all.
I am currently waiting to find out, and this is where it's like, be a sport, no spoilers. I am currently waiting to find out who that new blonde lady is.
That's when we go to our field trip to the north, you will meet her and her crew.
It's like, my exact words to you, I think it was like, who is she? And how do I join her religion? She just looks awesome. When
I was thinking about the differences between this FMAB and previous series, by the way, she is also not a character in the O3 anime. So another mark in the column for why FMAB is better than the other one. But that was again one of those characters where I was like, this is going to be a senpai favorite. Alphonse, I knew was going to be one. I knew May was going to be one, and this other character was going to be one. I was surprised that Armstrong was one of your favorites. But he's a good. No, I'm saying you know what I mean. I can predict most things, but I was like, interesting.
He is large and friend shaped.
Yeah, but yeah, no, the new opening is sick, and I love the animation of it. So it shows a lot of cool things going on and characters that we're going to meet and all that kind of stuff.
I do enjoy, and I've said this before, I love a good opening, and I love that time period of, who are you? I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to see what your deal is. You sure do look fun.
Yeah. I'm actually thinking we're probably going to go out that way pretty soon, because in my mind I'm going, what happens next in this story? And I know there's a couple beats we have to hit still, and I'm like, when does that field trip happen? I forgot.
So, May finally meeting Edward.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part. May finally meets Ed.
So I was listening as I was mixing and uploading episodes. Like I said, we're, it's not going to be like this for very long, but we are currently well into the future listening to the past. And I was listening to the bit where I was like, oh boy, May sure is going to be disappointed when she meets Edward.
And I'm like, sitting here just like, hee.
I'm like, oh boy, she sure was. She just...
My favorite line of that whole experience is when you said she's crossing out the name May Elric in all her notebooks.
She is. It's kind of like, it was sort of the equivalent of like when you have a bad dream about your friend and they talk shit about you in your dream and you call them up like, how dare you? Like, he technically he didn't do anything. It's just she thought up with, and imagine like meeting this tiny little girl who the minute she sees you, she's like, you traitor, you broke my heart, and he's got to be like, wait, did I? It was everything I hoped for and more. She's wonderful.
Yes, it's good. It's good.
So that's where I am at the moment. I do have lots of other thoughts, but I want to hold off on them for a minute.
Oh, what? Why?
Because I want to hear what you have to say first.
Oh, well, I was waiting for this episode to happen again because when Ling was first introduced and you were like, I don't like him. I was like, oh, please like him. Ling is cool, you know.
And then it was like, okay, fine, I like him.
Okay, fine, I like him. He feels guilty that Lan Fan lost an arm, I guess. And, no, I'm kidding. But I was actually really waiting for this to happen because I was waiting for you to feel validated about not liking Ling. But, like I said, it's only episode 28. We have a long way to go. Don't think anything just yet.
It's really weird because it's like, it's absolutely in character what he did.
It is, and I think what's actually quite interesting is that now we have our second human turned homunculus.
Yeah. So
that's happened now. We now have that twice, you know, in the series. And also, I think Greed, you know, OG Greed, we knew very briefly, but we already knew a couple interesting things about him with stuff like, well, he was like a renegade of the other homunculus. He was not playing around with them. He had his own goals and his own ambitions. He was doing his own thing. So, right. If anything, it really does make sense that as to why Ling would, you know, be willing to host Greed, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to see how this progresses again. And I'm saying that even though I've seen this and I know what's going to happen.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling so well.
Yeah. So I was waiting for that to happen and I was excited to see it happen. And I just cracking up because it's one of those things where I know all the dramatic things happening and I know that you're like screaming at the and just like tee-hee-hee, I'm a prankster.
That, listeners, that is the most fun with trading shows with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Is and again, that's one of the reasons why I say no spoilers. It's we both need to hear or read or whatever each other's reactions when certain things happen.
Yes.
Because we're both sitting here with little lists of, I wonder what she'll do when blah happens.
Right.
I wonder what she'll think of so-and-so. You
right.
know? And it's the joy. We want to be the heroes.
Yeah.
Or the villains, depending on...
I think the most villainous thing I've had to hold off on is it's still the top two is still the hiding the Nina thing and hiding Hugh's dying was the biggest shock, I think.
Hiding Hughes,
because you knew Nina, you knew everything about Shout Tucker and Nina before even watching the series. I don't think you knew anything about Hughes.
I did not. Nina is a meme, you know.
Yes, this is true.
So Nina is such a meme that I've been making memes, but
this is also true.
What'd you say?
This is also true. You have been making memes. I'm impressed that your meme game is this like excited with a very short-term exposure to FMA. You're like making memes already.
I am firing off the spicy memes, and you're firing off the fan art. I won't call it spicy because it's just nice.
It's
but
it's not spicy.
It's just good. It's like this is what happens. This is how you know.
Yeah.
So good lord.
Well, unrelated to anything exciting, guys, I want to mention Hohenheim. Because I actually did bring this up to you. Hohenheim, I mentioned vaguely and like the first episode we did of the podcast. He is a character who is radically different in this series from the 03 series. He, there's still more to come, obviously. He's still a very mysterious figure, but I just want to he is extremely different between the series. And I find him just infinitely more interesting in Brotherhood than in the 03. But one of my, I was joking that Hohenheim shows my evolution as a person from 2005 to current day, because it's the original anime series Hohenheim is, like, so the FMA, the original one, is a little more, let me put it this way, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood follows manga artwork very closely and very tightly. The 03 anime series is a bit more stylized to kind of current, the contemporary anime trends. So Hohenheim in this series is a lot more he's a lot more square in the face and square in the nose as far as how he's drawn. In the 03 series, is a lot more bishy. I was just joking that Hohenheim shows my evolution as a character, as a person, because I thought he was totally fine in the 03 series, but I'm like, he's a lot more attractive in this series. And I'm like, maybe it's because I'm 28 versus 14 when I was watching the first show. But he is way more that character archetype that I like. But also, I like his dream sequence. I thought was interesting because despite recap episodes being terrible, what I liked about this recap episode was that it wasn't with characters just sitting around chit-chatting around a fire about, remember how we tried to bring Mom back to life? It was with a character who we've had almost no time with. It was with Hohenheim, and who's a character we've had no time with, but is going to be very important to the series. And I've been holding back on, because we've seen Hohenheim a couple times and we've seen Father a couple times, and I know you've probably had thoughts and theories about them, because remember, they look exactly the same. But I'm in episode 28, in Father, I think it's made pretty clear that they are not the same person.
Yeah,
because we see them in two different locations at the same time.
That's as maybe. There are still, funnily enough, my theory had nothing to do with Father and Hohenheim being literally the same person.
I will tell you, I remember when I was reading the manga way back in the day, I was so damn confused about it. And I think it's because with when manga releases, you're reading a manga like every 4 or 5 months. Mm-hmm. And so you forget it. And I remember reading it and being like, wait, I'm confused, but I refuse to read my previous volumes. So I remember being confused. Reading manga spaced out by months, because that's how manga release schedules worked. But in Hohenheim's dream sequence, he imagines Father berating him at one point, and he says, Father at one point is like, "You honestly believe that one act of caring will make you caring," or something like that. And I was like, what's the one act that he's talking about? Is he talking about the act of having kids? Is that what you're talking about, Father?
Yeah.
I wrote down a word that I don't want to say on the podcast, but I was like, wait, what act? But I am interested just to, I love this journey. I love the journey of Brotherhood. So I'm hoping that we get into that more, and that I'm just so. Can you what were your hymns and your theories when we like, so where's your brain at?
So maybe for like one hot second I thought that Father and Hohenheim were literally the same person, and then I went, no, that's too easy, and it doesn't line up to anything.
True.
So it's like, I thought about it for more than 1 second and went, no, that doesn't fit. It's something else. But people looking like people, this is a weird-ass world where, Philosopher's Stones can take over bodies, and humans can be transmuted and chimeraed, and nothing is sacred, so, God only knows at this point. My interest is really, God, I had theories, but it's like, I kind of shoved them all aside because now I'm just fascinated. It's like, I don't even want to... Did you shove them
aside because they're wrong? Is that what you're trying to cover for here?
No, I shoved them aside because I became more interested in... I am obviously interested in the plot progression, but I became more interested in not what Hohenheim and Father looking alike means in the story. Mm-hmm. That'll happen. Mm-hmm. But just... And I apologize because here we go. This always happens when I watch something.
Okay.
From a psychological standpoint.
Oh, right. Yeah.
From the psychology of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners, I wrote a whole book on Heaven Sent, and it was largely Jungian, so I'm sorry, here we go. Because, look, there was a character called Father, and I went, oh boy, you know, whether it has anything to do with the Elric's father or it's just a father archetype, it's a thing. And so here's the thing. We have not seen enough for me to know this is the case. My theory is more a thematic one than a literal plot one. Even if father is not Hohenheim, what he is, what he does, and who he looks like means that I feel in a thematic sense he will serve as a father archetype to Edward in one of a few ways. And I don't mean a father figure, I mean a father archetype.
Okay.
There are two, I mean there's many, but there's really two types of father archetypes. Light fathers and dark fathers. Light father is sort of the wise figure, the one you turn to when you're a child. The dark father is, you know, the dark side of that. You know, the bad person. And, you know, Darth Vader's dark father. Just to give you a fast version of that. Either way, in sort of coming-of-age stories for male characters, encountering the father and surpassing or defeating the father is the point.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that carries over. I mean, it's kind of carried over in a lot of shonen anime I've seen because it's so inbuilt in how we think. But with father figures, both of them, the light and the dark, encapsulate what the son could be. And that really hits home when you look at how much of a family resemblance there is. You know, like, I can't ignore that. So both, to me, I think, maybe, question mark, both Hohenheim and father serve as, watch me be super duper wrong about this next episode. I don't care, I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
Both Hohenheim and father serve as potentials for what Edward Elric feels he could become or knows he could become. And as we learn more, and here's the thing, I don't know a lot about Hohenheim, I just know that Edward really does not want to see him. So here's the thing, is as homunculus heavy and all this other junk as father is, I don't even know which one's the light or dark father. That is where I'm going nuts.
Okay.
Because, like, I feel that we are looking at the light father and the dark father. Edward is going to have to come to terms with one and defeat the other.
Gotcha.
And I don't know which is which.
I like, even regardless of I know the outcome, obviously.
Of course you
do. However, I also never watched the series with this in mind. I've just watched the series to be like, I love Fullmetal Alchemist. Like, as a reminder, I am not the smart one of this mindset. But that's actually very, very interesting, and it's going to be something I'm going to carry now in mind as we watch it, because I've never watched it with that perspective. So I'm really hoping you get something, you get out of it what you're looking for, because I'm thinking, that's really interesting.
I honestly, if there is a story to tell, I will get something out of it, even if I am completely off base. You know,
I think you're somewhat on the right track, if only because they made the decision to name a character Father.
When you okay, look, when you have a coming of age story and you have a character named Father, it is pretty clear what's going on.
Right.
Yeah. But I love that. And even if it turns out not to be the exact case, there are hints of it, and I love the fact that it's such a, I don't, when I say traditional, I don't mean as in a bad way. I mean, it's just this very, very solid, this really sets it more and more in my mind than ever as this very solid, grounded, kind of almost fairy tale story.
Well, this is also interesting because, as we've mentioned before, that this show has a lot of great dads, there's a lot of great dads in Fullmetal Alchemist. And so I think actually it's going to be, and I kind of, again, I forgot about that until just now when you're talking about fathers and all that stuff, and so I think it's going to be interesting to continue to explore the theme of fatherhood in Fullmetal Alchemist, which, because again, I really do think that FMA is unique in that regard, where there's a lot, FMA is unique in the anime sense, where there's a lot of unique characters, but also, and all of them are developed characters, and I think, on top of that, you have a lot of developed relationships, you have a lot of developed families, like, there's a lot going on in this series, and I think you could probably make a whole, like, analytical YouTube documentary essay about fathers in Fullmetal Alchemist.
And, oh, don't tell me that, because I might.
It'd be a lot better than the same damn retread of philosophy of FMA that I keep getting recommended 20,000 different variations of, okay?
No, but I really am. I am so interested in both Hohenheim and Father as separate characters, and also how they connect to Ed and Al. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it'll be as much the case with Al. You've noticed I haven't included Al in this whole coming-of-age thing, because he is... I love him as a character. He's a very well-developed character, but it's not as much his story.
No, and also, in addition, it's just really because that if just in the narrative, the thing is that Al was a baby when Hohenheim left, and so Ed is the only one of the two that actually remembers him. And
Al was a baby.
He has a resentment about it. Also, I think because Ed's personality is just more this way, you know, or Al is the nicer one.
Mm-hmm. Al is the tall, polite suit of armor that you would take home to your mother.
Al is the nice and polite one who will find a way to make something his fault instead of yours. Ed is the one who will find something to make it your fault instead of his.
As I said, I think way back in the first episode, I can sympathize with Ed because I too would do anything for Al. I still stand by that. It is very interesting also as we meet Father to see the homunculi. Homunculoids. To see the homunculoids and see that they're like extensions of him, or aspects might be a better term.
Yeah.
And I am very curious about that, because the whole thing about greed being a different greed, it's like, or, you know, at least thinking he's a different greed, whether he is or not, you know, is yet to be seen, but that would scan. But that is actually very interesting to see them as aspects of the Father, and oh boy, again, that's freaking, I don't even know where to go with that one.
Well, see?
I'm gonna have to sit on that one for a minute.
I'm interested. I want to see.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to come back around to.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can't tell, I loved these episodes because I had wondered ever since we knew that big air quotes Father was a character if this was going to be a thing to explore. And then these two episodes came around and went, yes! And also, my final sort of thing on that point that I had forgot, I wrote it down. Hohenheim seeing Trisha at all the different ages. I'm like, all right, there are a few things this could mean. This could mean that they grew up together. This could mean that he is visualizing her at different ages because of attitudes and because it helps with different messages. Or it could mean that he is old as sin and actually as an adult. And then we have this kind of weird American in Paris daddy long legs thing going where he actually is a lot older than he looks and met Trisha when she was quite young, and I don't know, because, again, it's Fullmetal Alchemist and nothing is sacred. Because as we were saying in an earlier episode, literally anything is possible.
True.
Literally anything is possible, so it's very hard for me to say, no, that can't happen, because I don't know. You know?
Right. Yeah, you know, and actually at first, because the whole thing was, I was actually telling you, I was like, I don't remember if the recap was a dream or a flashback, and it's a dream.
Yeah, it's absolutely a dream, because, like, Panako's mask comes off, and it's Hohenheim.
Yeah,
and
when that happens, you're like, oh, this is a dream.
The fact that it's a dream sequence, and other than Trisha, everyone in it ended up being Hohenheim or Father or something, kind of scans actually with dream theory, though. Which is that everyone in your dream is you.
Oh, okay.
That is a thing. It's some part of yourself, and so, you know, even if it's like, you know, if I have a dream and my friend is in it, then they're probably not representing my friend, they're probably representing something about myself that my friend exemplifies.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, so I was very impressed that, like, all of a sudden the masks start coming off. I'm like, oh, no, this scans very nice.
I just really want you to make an expository video essay docuseries. It's an hour and a half long for YouTube, just to be like, Fullmetal. Oh, you can make like a 10-part series. It's like Fullmetal Alchemist as seen through the lens of insert thing here. Because like I said, there's already a lot of hot takes about the philosophy of Fullmetal Alchemist, and I've watched a couple of them. Some of them are fine. Some of them I've clicked off because I know they have immediately lost the point.
when we're done with this, when we actually finally get to the end of both shows, I may need something to do.
Yeah.
If any of you would watch that, listeners, let me know.
I've already drawn Life on Mars fan art, so I've upheld my end of the bargain.
It's good, y'all. It's very good. So yeah, I think. All right, this has been a heck of an episode.
Okay, I will avoid our stop into shipping corner then.
No. Let's do the stop into
very quickly into shipping corner, and honestly, it's only about Life on Mars today. I just feel like Sam and Annie are doomed. Like this is never going to happen. We only have 2 episodes left, and also Sam is really annoying and like with the everything. I can only hope that maybe something happens because Sam has let go of Maya and all that kind of stuff, but. I was so frustrated all over again, screaming in our chat box at the end of the episode when they're in the hospital, and Sam is grinning like an idiot, and I was just like, for God's sake, please kiss. Oh my God. Oh, it's not going to happen. For F's sake, I was just like so infuriated at all of it. And so I was like, it's never gonna happen. Fine. This is not gonna happen. Why do I even have my hopes anymore? It's not gonna happen. Because this show hates me. And Sam is just this weenie loser character when it comes to romance. So, like, why am I caring anymore? I have lots of feelings about this.
This is how I know you like the show.
Because I have so many emotions about ships.
I was honestly, I hate to say it, but as much as I knew you would like many aspects of the show, the main reason I wanted you to get into both of them is for the ships. And
I'm gonna say the same thing about Fullmetal Alchemist, and I know it's already true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Due to a, as of right now, unreleased podcast episode coming up and its title.
Oh yeah. oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know what, I'll put this out there because you told me this, that you were asked, is Ginger a shipper? And the answer is yes, but not like that. And how do I am of the type that I work with what is presented in front of me. And in addition to that, I typically abide by canon. Like we don't purposefully take randos and smush them together. I am a person who works very strictly by canon because I do think that creators have an intent, and if I pick up on the intent, I might as well run with it.
If you put a perfectly good couple in front of me, then I will likely become invested in them.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of my feel, is if they're there and you've written the thing and it's right there, and granted I do have favorite types of couples, and
oh yeah, we all have types.
They cause me pain, and you know, but
it's but like I actually I had a particular ship before something even started. And then the thing started, and I had canon content, and I went, oh, and I actually abandoned said ship and went to the proper ship because I liked that. It just worked a lot better than what I had thought originally. So yeah, I am a person. I've said I am willing to admit if the show wants me to go to a certain thing, and I can get pretty on board. I'm pretty much there. I can honestly say I don't think I've had any like crack ships or whatever. So Life on Mars is saying Sam and Annie, and I go, yes, please.
They are, you know, for a time-traveling police procedural, they are very good at offering you couples on a silver platter. And going, I know, would you like these?
I know, I have heard about Senpai's Ashes to Asses ship for the longest time. Since we've been friends for quite a long time now. I have heard about this fabled ship for a long time, for another reason, which maybe we will someday get into. So I am really looking forward to seeing this. because Senpai and I tend to have ships that go along the same path, so to speak. So I'm hoping. This is why I'm not like sad about. I am sad about Life on Mars coming to an end, but I'm looking forward to Ashes to Ashes because I am for various reasons.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I feel pretty solid about it.
Okay.
I feel pretty solid about it. So, with that in mind, we have to go to our sin and violence of the week.
Oh gosh, man, there's so much to talk about. There's so much going over. Favorite violence. I was so involved. I was actually not even thinking about the violence of this show. I don't know.
Personally,
what do you think?
The ferrets.
The ferrets were good. The dude
set himself up.
Laugh.
The dude set himself up for the ferrets. And you could tell that's the thing he says every time someone asks him a question. He's like,
yes.
Oh no, I would rather have rabbit ferrets chew on my nuts than tell you. And then one day
they snapped and they were like, guess what? We have those ferrets you keep talking about. I think my favorite violence actually goes to the end where Chris shoots the lady in the arm. Because it's a payoff, because Chris is my precious boy and I will protect him. And,
good job, Chris. Good job,
and
Chris.
I think it's because of that payoff with Gene earlier being like, look at how Chris is a waste of effort, and then Chris shoots the lady in the arm, and I was like, yes, that's my son.
Good boy, Chris.
Good boy,
Chris.
Good lad. Yeah. So I think that was my favorite violence.
Sin. Oh my goodness, there's so much sin.
There's so much sin.
So much sin. I mean,
I would maybe Ling becoming Greed.
That's where I'm sitting.
I would think that's where I go. I think
that was multiple levels of sin. it's father deciding to make another homunculus. Mm-hmm. Ling going for it. Uh-huh. And I mean this was like this was sort of like a group project sin. So I think that has to take sin of the week.
Yeah.
Sin of the day. Sin of the month. Sin of the year.
Sin of the time period.
Sin of the year.
Well, it's a little early to be proclaiming something the sin of the year. I'm just going to put that out there.
Oh, God. I mean, I assume that cannot be the worst thing in this show.
Well, it's already happened. We already saw the person that was just Bradley becoming a homunculus. So, like, how bad can it be the second time around?
That's true.
You know, whatever. There's a whole lot more sin to be coming up, son.
And it's like there's many and varied types of sin never before dreamed of in your world. We're just going to take it to whole new levels. You've seen Chimera, you've seen a homunculus. We're gonna... God, I don't know what we're going to do next.
You're going to see insert redacted statement here.
Dogs and cats living together.
Yes.
Mass hysteria. All right, well...
On that note.
On that note.
On that bombshell, I think we're going to rock on out of here for now.
I think so.
Well, that was the Sin and Violence podcast. I'm Ginger.
And I'm Kara.
And that was Sin and Violence.
The podcast of equivalent exchange.